Okay, 31 books later, we are finally done. My throat hurts so bad. Okay. Hi book friends, welcome back to Books and Tea Time. I feel so autumnal today, which doesn't really make sense because this is my summer wrap-up, but it's officially September. I've got my autumn colors, some green eyeshadow. I don't know, I was just feeling it. But nevertheless, this is my summer wrap-up video. So I usually have done these on my blog in the past, but I have some other blog posts that I really want to do, and I only post on my blog like every other week because I do have a lot of school writing to do and I tend to get behind on blogging, but I still love blogging and having my blog. I always have my blog link in the description box of every video if you want to check it out, and I have my latest posts down there too. But I figured I would turn my summer wrap-up into a video. Also, I don't know if you know this, but I do my wrap-ups by season. I don't do monthly TBR and wrap-up videos just because I'm terrible at keeping up with it all, and it's a little overwhelming to have to do that every month. So I do them seasonally, so I have like a winter, summer, fall/autumn, and then a spring one. That's not the order of the seasons, but oh well. So this is gonna be my first wrap-up video on this channel, and let me count how many books we have. So we have 31 books to talk about today, and that's a lot. I read so much this summer. So basically there's all the books that I read from May through August, because May is kind of the beginning of summer for me as a university student. I finish up in April, so May is like the beginning of summer for me. So let's get started because I have 31 books to wrap up for you guys today. I have my laptop here and I keep a list in Google Keep of all the books that I'm reading as I finish them throughout the season so that I can go back for my wrap up. I'm gonna show you guys my laptop stickers really quick. Gotta love them. I actually want to get a couple more. I want some Hunter x Hunter ones. Let's get started. The very first book that I read this summer was Before She Ignites by Jodi Meadows, and I actually just talked about this entire series in my current 2020 favorites video, so I'll have that in a card and linked down below if you guys are interested in hearing more about this. But basically this is a dragon-centered island fantasy. There's mental health rep, LGBT rep, and it's just a really great story. Sweet romances, lots of dragons, and a very intricate political and religion system, or like mythology cycle. So I really loved this. I picked this up on a whim actually because I really liked the cover, and I ended up really loving this series. So I definitely recommend it if you like YA fantasy, if you like dragons, and if you're just looking for a really fun series to pick up. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. For a first installment, it was really good. I'm gonna make a little pile of all the books right behind me, and we'll see how tall it gets. The next book, I finished a series that I have been reading for what feels like forever. So this book is the third book in the Mistborn trilogy, I think is what it's called. It's The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This series is my second experience with Brandon Sanderson. I read his standalone novel Warbreaker, which I have up there, but you guys can't see it in this shot. I still love that way more. I think that's like one of the best fantasy books ever. I love that book. So I did like the Mistborn trilogy, but not as much as Warbreaker. This third installment was really good. The end, the twist, I did not see coming at all. He really gets you with plot twists, Brandon Sanderson does. I literally gasped out loud while reading Warbreaker more than once just because I was so surprised. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars because I really liked it. For me, my favorite characters are some of the side characters. I don't really know how to describe this book because so much happens and changes, but basically at the beginning of the first book, we're following Vin, who is a like street thief, and the magic system is so intricate. It revolves around consuming metal and burning it in your stomach to get these special abilities, but only certain people can do that. and our main character Vin can do that, and basically she joins this group of thieves and they try and overthrow the evil emperor of the world called the Lord Ruler, and things just explode from there. Lots of stuff happens. Next, I picked up the second book in the Fallen Isles trilogy by Jodi Meadows. The first one I just showed you before she ignites. This one is called As She Ascends. I love this color. This blue is just so beautiful. And I also gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I rarely like the second book in a series the most, but I think in this instance I did like the second book the most. I just love how things evolve from the first book, and this one picks up almost immediately, I think, after the first one does. But I really love this series, and I talked about this again in my favorites video, but I feel like the series is so underrated, and this was a great second installment. I feel like it keeps the pace of the first one, but it also adds more, gives you more information about the world. You see the characters evolve and develop, and their relationships do as well. And I just really love Mira, who is the name of our main character. I don't know if I told you that the first time around, but I love Mira. She's an incredible main character, and this book is just really good, so you guys should check it out. From there, I picked up a book that I was so highly anticipating, and it's so delivered, and that is the sequel, the second book in the Legacy of Orisha series by Tomi Adeyemi. Oh my god, this is everything I want in fantasy. I love mythology, and this book is inspired by African mythology, and there's this really rich magic system where there's clans that connect with a couple different gods. Follow 3 main characters, and one of them is part of the oppressed group of magi, who are the people who inherited these magical powers from the gods, and the monarchy, I guess you could call it. The monarchy and the government that takes over tries to murder all of the magi who possess these special powers to ensure their power. So you're following 2 of the children of the monarch who takes over and tries to eradicate and wipe out all people who can practice magic. And then you're following Zelly, who can practice magic, and she has like inherited that from her family, from her mother. It's so rich. It's such a good book. It's such a good series, and it maps on beautifully to things that are happening in our world. Even though it's a fantasy world, it's so beautiful, and I feel like the perspectives are so rich. I just feel like I learned so much about like inheriting history and how history affects the present. One of my favorite characters ever is in this book. The first book is about Zelly befriending a child of the monarchy, and they go on this journey together with a couple other people and try to bring back magic. Gave this a 5 out of 5. It's so amazing. I love where the series has gone from the first book, and it leaves off on such a massive cliffhanger. I don't know how I'm gonna wait for the third book. After that, I picked up a middle grade book. The back described it of reminiscent of Frankenstein and the Brothers Grimm, and I love Frankenstein. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and I love fairy tales, so I picked this up. And this is Monstrous by Marcy Kate Conley. This is what it looks like. So it's a little middle grade story, and I ended up giving this a 2.75 out of 5 stars. I feel like this had the potential to be a really great middle grade series, but instead it's treated as a standalone, and I didn't really like the ending, and everything that happens is kind of predictable, and I just feel like it could have been so incredible, and it really wasn't. So basically we follow our main character, whose name I don't even remember, Chimera, who is a young girl that has been resurrected by her like mad scientist father, and like he uses parts of her body and parts of other animals to like reanimate her, kind of like how Victor Frankenstein reanimates the creature in Frankenstein, and he uses her as sort of like a vigilante. And there's like this magical city that lives right near them, and there's wizards, there's dragons, there's a whole lot going on, and I liked all of the pieces individually, but I feel like it's really weird. It's like they tried to squish 3 stories into one, and it doesn't really come off super great. Then I picked up a reread. So I reread The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman because I'm doing a research project using the His Dark Materials trilogy, so I had to reread and sticky tab and mark a bunch of passages. And I mean, this is the best fantasy series I think I've ever read, or one of them. It's my top fantasy of all time. It's so incredible. Don't let the fact that it's marketed as like YA throw you off. Obviously, this is my second time reading it, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 the second time around. So I'm not going to talk too much about this. I can do an entire review on The Golden Compass, or on the His Dark Materials trilogy if you guys are interested in that, but I feel like a lot of people know about these books already, and I've talked about them on my channel in like so many of my vlogs so far, so I don't feel like I need to spend too much time on this, but 5 out of 5. After that, I finished the Fallen Isles series with the final installment of When She Reigns, and this, I love this color. We've talked about this already. This like light lavender purple is one of my favorite, if not my favorite colors of all time. And this was such a great conclusion novel. It kept me on the edge of my seat. There was a lot that happened that I was not expecting at all. The ending isn't confusing, but it was unexpected. I did not know what was going to happen. I had ideas about what might happen, and I had clues as to what I thought was going to happen, and then none of it happened. Like, it caught me by surprise, and I liked that, but I still, I don't love the ending, but I don't hate the ending. I'm kind of indifferent towards it. I ended up giving this final installment 5 out of 5 stars. But it wrapped up the series really well. I loved where all of the characters ended up and how things panned out, even though it was a little confusing. I feel like Meadows was able to effectively work in everything that she wanted into the pages that she had. So yeah, I really loved this book. From there, I picked up the second book in the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman, The Subtle Knife, also for research, also for annotation purposes. Also amazing, 5 out of 5. This is another second installment that I really love. You think that The Golden Compass is incredible, and it is. It's such a good story, and then you get to The Subtle Knife, and Philip Pullman just says, hey, let me expand your mind even more. Let me like quadruple the magic and the beauty and the excitement of my first book and just see if you can keep up. I am the biggest Philip Pullman fangirl that there is, let me tell you. And next, I started a new fantasy series. I read a lot of fantasy, if you guys hadn't put that together. I have a fantasy recommendations post on my blog. I'll have that link down below if you want to read it, because a lot of these books are on it and I go a little more into detail. One of my favorite fantasy series, also a series that I talk about in my favorites video, is The Rhaenyra Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. It's a trilogy, and it's just one of the most hilarious, action-packed, beautiful fantasy, high fantasy, epic fantasy series that I've ever read. And there is a prequel series that has, I think, 4 or 5 books, and I started it. So this is the first book in the prequel, The Crown Tower, and this series is called The Rhaenyra Chronicles. So this follows, oh my god, Milo is barking at something and I don't know what it is, but it's really annoying. This chronicles how the two main characters of the Rhaenyra Revelations meet. Hadrian is a mercenary and Royce is a thief, and it's a very like hate to love friendship, which is like the best thing in the world. It literally makes me laugh out loud, and I loved this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was a great first installment to a prequel series, and I'm really looking forward to picking up the next one soon. I actually read this in my first ever reading vlog. It's rough, but if you want to check it out, I'll have a link down below. The next thing that I read is How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. And this is the first piece of anti-racist literature that I read this year. And honestly, to be completely transparent with you, that I've read ever, and I know that's a problem, but I'm committed to educating myself and becoming a better person. This book absolutely taught me so many things. I annotated the crap out of it. I went back and made myself a little journal notebook where I wrote down a bunch of quotes and a bunch of topics that I want to research further. but basically each chapter is broken down into talking about a specific issue and how that issue intersects with race. There's a chapter all about power, there's a chapter all about ethnicity, there's a chapter all about body and culture and behavior and class, and he talks about his own experiences as a young person all the way through to his graduate degree, I believe, maybe the conclusion of his undergraduate degree, and he takes you through that time. He gives you his own personal stories to relate to, which I absolutely love, getting the insight into his own life and how he became passionate and educated himself and then used that to educate other people. I just love that motivation and the passion. It was really inspirational for me, but also how he unites all of these topics and all of these intersections and highlights them is so valuable, and I really do love that. I am going to read Stamped from the Beginning by him very, very soon, and also he just announced on Instagram that he's coming out with a workbook journal version of this in October, and I'm so excited for that to come out. I can't wait. This was absolutely incredible. 5 out of 5 stars. I have never talked for this long. My throat is starting to hurt and we're only like halfway done, so let's pick up the pace. After that, I picked up the audiobook for Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I feel like I say that wrong every time, but I hope I didn't. This follows a young sister and brother living in Nigeria, and their father is a very, very strict Christian, and it kind of chronicles their experience going to live with their aunt, who is more of a traditionalist, I think is the word that they use. Their aunt and their grandpa are very much resisting the colonization and the Christianity that is being forced upon the people in their community in Nigeria, and the father has sort of assimilated in a way and adopted Christianity and accepted it into his life and wants to enforce it upon his children. So it's sort of about the daughter and the brother coming together and learning about which path they want to follow and what they feel speaks to them the most. And it was really sweet and beautiful. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The narrator is great for the audiobook, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was good. I do want to read more by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I've heard Americana is great, so I'm probably gonna pick that one up next. Then from there, I picked up A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney, and this was the best decision I think that I've made in a very long time. So I talk about this book constantly on my channel, and I don't really feel that bad because it's so good. This is an urban fantasy Alice in Wonderland retelling that is inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it has a boss young black woman as our main protagonist. I really don't have to tell you anymore, do I? It's so funny and witty and sarcastic, and the way that it is, and McKinney has a way of writing that she's so aware of like pop culture. Very funny, all of the references, but also then you have like the Alice in Wonderland, like the allusions to Alice in Wonderland and the characters from Alice in Wonderland, and it's just, it's so good. I love it. I'm actually in the middle of reading the second book right now. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and it's just another fantasy series that needs to be talked about more, honestly, because McKinney is so funny, and this is another book that makes me laugh out loud and like giggle to myself. It's just so good, and Alice as a main character is just so cool. She's kind of got like this nerdy side to her, and then like this awesome like Buffy the Vampire Slayer badass side where she like fights these monsters, but she also just like loves video games and comics and like anime, and it's just, she's everything I want to be in life. Next, I picked up another audiobook. I read The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett, another very, very, very popular book that really delivered for me. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and again, I listened to the audiobook, and this follows two sisters who are white passing, and one of the sisters basically decides to live her life as a white passing woman and leave her other twin. Did I say that they were twins? Sorry, they're twin sisters. And she decides to leave her other twin right on the cusp of adulthood when they run away from their hometown. And then the other twin decides to live as a black woman. What I really like is that we're following twins, and yet we see how incredibly different their lives turn out based on their decisions and what they decide they want their life to be like and what they want to do in their life. But we also follow their children, so it's kind of it's almost following 3 generations, but basically it's 2 generations. And it's a really good story, great representation. We have a transgender character in this book. It deserves all the hype, let me tell you. Next, I picked up a collection of poetry called If They Come For Us by Fatima Asghar, and this was so wonderful. First of all, the cover is gorgeous. The poems in here, written by Asghar, explore her identity as a young Pakistani Muslim woman living in America. The poems were just so beautiful and inspirational, and I feel like I learned a lot about the challenges that young immigrants have to face. But it's not just about her experience as a Pakistani Muslim woman, it's about sexuality and gender exploration and how she basically gets comfortable and situated in the identity that she is most happy with and most comfortable with. I don't read a whole lot of poetry, but I really did enjoy this one, so maybe I'll try more poetry in the future. Next, just very quickly, I read The Amber Spyglass, which is the 3rd book in His Dark Materials trilogy. The best ending, makes me cry every time. It's a very good ending, but it still hits you. Like, you know that's how it has to end, but it hurts deep inside. You're just like, why, Philip Pullman? Why would you do that to me? But 5 out of 5, absolutely loved it. Did I tell you? I gave this 5 out of 5 as well. I don't know if I told you that, but 5 out of 5 for The Amber Spyglass. I knew that going into it. It was a 5 out of 5 the first time, and I'll give it a 5 out of 5 for the rest of my life. Another short, impactful novel, The Deep by River Solomon. I also just talked about this in my favorites video, but I'll give you a quick rundown. This book follows the descendants of enslaved African women who were pregnant when they were thrown over or jumped over slave ships, and their babies survive and become mermaids and develop this like mermaid community in the deep of the ocean. It's magical, it's nuanced, it's beautiful. Who doesn't love black mermaids? And River Solomon does an excellent job of delivering an incredible narrative in only like 150 pages. So if you're looking for a short but powerful book, this is definitely the one you should go with. Next, I finished up a book that I have been reading since the start of my channel, the biography of Lord Byron by Fiona McCarthy. I'm not gonna really bore you guys what this is about, but I'm doing a research project on Lord Byron and Philip Pullman. So I read the Golden Compass trilogy, the His Dark Materials trilogy, and then I read this over the summer. I gave this 5 out of 5. It's very, very well written, well researched, and kind of funny at times. Then I picked up Steel Tide by Natalie C. Parker, second book in the Seafire trilogy, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5. It's better than the first one, but I still don't absolutely love this series. The first book follows Caledonia and her group of female pirates, and basically they are kind of rebels and outcasts in this world, and they're running from while also trying to take down this like ultimate authority. I don't love the main character, but I think that really, really made me dislike the first book, and she gets a little better in the second book. I did ultimately decide that I am going to read the third one, so I like the series. I don't love it. It could be better, but it also could be worse. There's good representation, which I do enjoy. We have a lot of LGBT plus characters featured in the pages, and I do like some of the side characters, but I don't agree with some of the writing choices that Parker makes, and I don't love Caledonia as a main character, so ultimately it's only a 3 out of 5 for me. Next, I picked up a second anti-racist literature text, and that is So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Oluo. Another incredible book that everyone should have to read in their life. Similarly to Kendi, Oluo also includes personal anecdotes at the beginning of each chapter to, again, ground you and give you specific examples of what she is talking about going into the chapter. What I really like about this one is that it really prepares you for having conversations, and that makes sense because it's so you want to talk about race. She gives you bullet points for how to discuss these things in a way that is productive, and especially as a white person or a non-black person, how to have these conversations in a way that doesn't push black people to the sidelines or tell black people how to experience racism and how to respond. And it's very much teaching white people how to have effective conversations, but also conversations that are sensitive to the people in the black community who have already dealt with too much to have to also deal with helping well-meaning white people. 5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it. Next, I picked up more epic fantasy. Oh yeah. I also talked about this book in my favorites video. I feel like this is just a repetition of my favorites video. No, I'm just kidding. So the next book I picked up is The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter, and another 5-star fantasy. How am I this lucky? I keep picking up fantasy and like people just knock it out of the park. I have the Fallen Isles series, I have Children of Virtue and Vengeance, I have the Crown Tower, I have A Blade So Black, I have the Historic Materials trilogy. I don't know if you consider the deep fantasy. I mean, it's kind of fantastical. There's mermaids. And then we come to this, and it's just like, this is a war-centered fantasy story following a single perspective, one perspective. We follow our main character Tao, who becomes basically the greatest swordsman in the world after a couple things occur. No spoilers. There's a very interesting magic system that I can't really get into. Tao's community, his people, at the very, very beginning of this book, we get a flashback to, like, I think 200 years ago when Tao's ancestors flee their homeland and occupy this new territory. And basically, ever since they arrived on this new mainland, they have been at war with the native people there. So that's why their war and battle is a very central focus to this monarchy, I guess it's a monarchy, to this government, because they're constantly at war with the native people, so they need soldiers, and so it's war-centered. There's a very intricate caste system, a unique magic system, the politics, there's incredible battle scenes. Evan Winter is so good at writing combat in a way that's interesting and understandable, because sometimes it can be dry reading combat. It's fast-paced. 5 out of 5. Love this. This also, the second book is coming out in November, like right before my birthday, so I'm gonna ask for it for my birthday, and after I finish school, I'm just gonna binge read it and probably cry. Our book stack is getting taller, guys. Next, I picked up Wonder Woman. I also talked about this in my favorites video. Wow, I'm super boring. But this is the second installment of the Wonder Woman series by Greg Rucka. It's called Year One. It's really, really well written. Again, I love the art style. I love what Greg Rucka adds to the Wonder Woman origin and mythology that already exists. I love the things that he adds to her character and to her lore. And I love the storyline of this particular installment. 5 out of 5. Loved it. Next, I picked up Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman. I read this because of Noelle Gallagher, who's one of my favorite booktubers. She really, really loves this book, and I gave it a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I liked it, but I did not like the ending. Essentially, this book follows our two main characters, Elio and Oliver. I guess you would call it a romance, like a contemporary romance. That would be the terminology I would use to describe it. But Elio is a young boy living in Italy with his family, and every summer they take in I guess grad students who stay with them in Italy. Summer that we are following in Call Me By Your Name, this boy, or I guess this man named Oliver comes, who's like in his 20s, and Elio quickly falls in love with him, and it's basically about their romance. It's spicy, it's saucy, it's really sweet, but I don't like the ending. so I gave it a little bit of a lower rating because of that, but it's still a really good book. And as far as romance goes, I don't read a lot of romance at all, but I was invested. I liked the characters. I was rooting for them. So that's a good sign, I guess. The next book I read is this massive behemoth, The Stand by Stephen King. I decided that I was going to read this over 1 week, and it ended up taking me like 2.5 weeks because it is 1,100 pages. This book is eerily similar to our current situation in the world. This is about a pandemic that kills, I think, like 99% of the population. It resembles the common flu, so this is your worst nightmare if you don't want to think about the coronavirus. So I don't recommend reading this if that stresses you out. Honestly, it stresses me out. I don't know why I read this. I didn't realize until I was like 100 pages into the book that that's what this is about. But basically, it follows all the people who survive and are somehow immune to this disease. And it gets really weird from there. But essentially, that's all I can tell you without giving away huge spoilers. Again, I'm conflicted about the ending, just because I feel like the real end of the book happens like 100 pages before the book actually ends. And so the ending drags. There are some character descriptions that made me feel a little icky. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. If you want to hear more detailed thoughts, I'll have my reading vlog centered on The Stand linked down below or in a card. After The Stand, I read Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. This is a South Asian inspired fantasy story where we follow our main character Lei, and she is chosen to be a paper girl, which is basically a concubine to the king. There is another very detailed caste system, and Lei falls in the lowest of the castes, so she is called upon or basically taken from her home and kidnapped and forced to become a sex slave to the king, who is the highest caste and obviously the highest in the land as the king. But she falls in love with one of her fellow paper girls. Spoiler alert, that's not really a spoiler, but yeah, there's a really sweet female romance in here. I liked the world building. The romance is definitely more on the sweet and subtle side. It's not as steamy as a Call Me By Your Name by any means, but it's also a fantasy, so there's other things going on, you know? It's not like the romance is the central focus. I gave this a 4 out of 5. Next, I read the legendary Shiver as an ebook on my phone, and I read this because the author reached out to me on Instagram and told me that they have a new debut book. They're a debut author and they wanted me to read it, so I read it. And this is a romance about two best friends. We follow the male perspective. His name's Will, and we follow him as he basically watches his best friend become a pop singer. It's a romance. It's a slow burn as a romance. I have a really detailed review of this in one of my reading vlogs. I'll have that linked if you're interested. This is another book where I didn't like the ending, and I also didn't like the main characters. For me, the side characters are the strength of this book, and I don't know if that's enough for me to recommend it to you guys to read, but if you like romance, I would check it out. If you don't like romance, I would read some other reviews, maybe see how you feel about it before you jump into it. Next, I read the audiobook for All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, and this is so good. So this is I think it's a collection of essays, though I don't have a physical copy, so I'm not sure if it's a collection of essays or if it's just a memoir like with chapters that chronicles Johnson's experiences as a young Black person and as a young queer person, and where the identities intersect, and how basically he chronicles his life from young childhood all the way through to graduating college. And so we follow him at these different stages in his life, and it's just really beautiful how he narrates it, and he's very passionate about sharing his story so that there are more queer stories for young queer people and young Black people and young Black queer people to read and to use to navigate the world that is very white, very straight, very cisgender. I thought that was so beautiful and brave in his mission and sharing all of these very intimate and in some points traumatic stories, but also the stories of joy and happiness and how he comes to know himself better. I read Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen for prepping for a course that I'm taking, that I am TAing for this fall. I really love this. It's super dramatic. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I have a detailed review for this and a whole vlog talking about it as well, and my voice is getting tired, but basically we follow 2 sisters, Eleanor and Marianne, and their journey trying to find love in Austinian England. Then I read Emma by Jane Austen for the same course as a prep, and I liked this less than I liked Sense and Sensibility. It's definitely, I didn't dislike it, but it's one of my least favorite Austen novels. We follow Emma. If you've seen the movie Clueless, you basically know what this is about, but she's super rich and beautiful, so she puts her nose in other people's business, and she basically has to learn how to not be manipulating other people as though it's kind of a game for her as like a spoiled rich girl. But so I didn't love Emma as a character. She does get better. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars because it's not the best, it's not the worst by any means. There are some good moments, but for the most part I was just like, eh. After Emma, I picked up the audiobook for Dangerous Alliance by Jennieke Cohen. I hope I'm saying that right. This is a book set in the time period where Jane Austen is publishing her novels, and we follow our main character Victoria, who is like a huge fan of Jane Austen's work. She reads all of them and she tries to live her life as an Austenian heroine. And this book is also so dramatic, so sensationalist, and I think it's that way on purpose for entertainment value. So it was really entertaining. The romance was sweet. It was kind of predictable, but I mean, it's not great literature, but I mean, if you like Austen, I think you'd like it. So I mean, if you like Austen or if you like historical romance, check it out, but otherwise I wouldn't really waste your time with it. Almost there. Next, I did something which I never do, and that is I listened to the audiobook while also reading a physical copy of Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a interview style story that is basically chronicling the rise to fame and the breaking up of a famous fictional band. There is an unknown interviewer who is interviewing all of the living members of the band and people that they knew to try and figure out, you know, how they got their rise to stardom and their eventual decline and breakup, their sudden breakup after a particular show. So it was really, really wonderful. I gave this a 5 out of stars too, a 5 out of 5 stars too. The audiobook is where it's at. If you're gonna read this, read the audiobook, because I did both just for like, because I could, because I had already owned a copy and I got the audiobook from my library. The ending is so sad. I thought about it for days and days and days. I still think about it sometimes. It's like, oh, I teared up at the very end. It's really, really good, and it will wreck you because it's not a positive, happy story. You're not gonna read this book and be happy at the end. Let me just tell you that, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't read it because it was worth it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you like when I do my wrap-ups here or if you would rather have them in written form on my blog. I did like filming this. I thought it was pretty fun to go over them, but again, you saw a lot of these already in vlogs, so I don't know if you feel like that's something that you want or something that you don't want. Just thought I would try it out, so let me know your feedback, your suggestions down below. If you're new, hello. I go by Addie or Adeline. I do mostly reading vlogs here on this channel, but we also put in a couple of hints of other bookish content. Go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe if that's your jam. Thank you so much for watching this video. Happy reading, happy writing, and happy living. Bye guys.